Jim Rogers, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Glenn, but let me just say, if you get your investment advice from the U.S. government, you're going to go bankrupt very, very quickly. So if you listen to Obama or Bernanke or the rest of them, you better just cash in your chips now.
So wait a minute, you're saying that when Barack Obama yesterday said that now might be a good time to get into the stock market, you're saying that's not necessarily something you should act on?
I wouldn't act on it. Are you kidding me? And in 2 years, you look back on it and you say, Mr. Obama, you said I should buy in March of 09. Would you please take me out of my losses? Because you're going to have losses. Things are going to get worse, Glenn. It's not good news.
Jim, tell me what you think America looks like in a year from now, 2 years from now, and 5 years from now.
There's going to be a lot more unemployment a year from now, more bankruptcies 2 years from now. We'll probably have civil unrest in the United States. Not just the United States. There's already civil unrest in many countries of the world. I'm afraid it's going to spread even to the United States.
I have been saying because capitalism only works when you let the weakest fail and then you pick up the pieces and you start over. I mean, it's the whole Edison thing. If the government would have stepped in and said, no, we'll make this light bulb work the first time, he wouldn't have gotten it right on the 5,000th time. Go ahead, sir.
The main problem is that for the last 15 years, Greenspan and the rest of the federal government would not let the market work. Every time somebody got in trouble, they called up Greenspan and said, save me, save me, save me. If he had let people go bankrupt, Long-Term Capital Management is one company, which some of your viewers probably know, we wouldn't have these problems now. But he refused to let the system work. He refused to let people go bankrupt, and now we are paying a horrible price.
Okay, but people say, because I believe we have got to stop the madness. We have got to stop all of this incredible spending. We've got to stop bailing people out now. But when I say that, people say, you don't know what you're talking about. That means the whole thing stops. And yes, I do know that, but we'll at least have something we can pick back up and move on from. Is that true or false?
That's absolutely totally true. What they're doing now is they're spending gigantic amounts of money down a rat hole, and the problem is a year or two when it comes clear that this has not worked, they will have shot all their reserves. They will shot whatever hope they have, and at that point, the U.S. dollar will collapse, interest rates will go higher. I mean, at that point, there's nothing left. And if they would go ahead and take the pain now, Glenn, and clean out the system now, there may be hope that we could start over. Sure, we're going to have 2 or 3 horrible years if we take the pain now. But I'd rather have 2 or 3 years bad now, Glenn, than 12, 13, 22 years of trouble. Look what's happened in Japan. It's 19 years later, and they're still suffering because they wouldn't take the pain.
You now have the rest of the world talking about a global solution, which to me is terrifying because I think we are looking at a planned society, a planned economy, a socialist society, or worse, over the entire globe. Does the idea of a global New Deal chill you to your marrow of your bone?
It scares me to death. I mean, certainly in the United States. But remember, Glenn, believe it or not, in China, they're not really talking quite the same way. It's amazing that the Chinese are now more capitalist than the Americans when we in America have nationalized so many places and are going to have to nationalize more. And the Chinese are going the opposite way. It's not going to be everybody, but it looks as though it's going to be just about everybody. I don't know. It's a terrible world we're going to be living in.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Well, you just got through saying, I mean, if they nationalize everything and we have essentially statism or government control everywhere, if most of the banks in the U.S. are government banks, if most of the insurance companies are government, that means just about everything is run by bureaucrats. And I have never known bureaucrats to develop a very dynamic society. I don't think you have either.
Jim, you know America, you know Americans. We are not Europeans in nation. We are freedom-loving people. We are people that will play along, and we will be sold down the river on socialism little by little. But when it comes down to losing our freedom and being controlled by the government, or worse yet, the world, Americans won't stand for that. Is this part of the civil unrest that you see? I can't imagine the Mountain West. I can't imagine Texas or the South going for a control of everything in our country, let alone the world. And that would mean that the government would have to become more aggressive to hold things together.
Well, that's called civil unrest. I mean, yes, there are going to be people who are going to be furious about it, including you, including me, and including plenty. Glenn, a lot of people in the last 10 years minded their matters. They saved their money. They didn't buy 5 or 6 houses with no money and no job. A lot of people did what they were supposed to. Wouldn't you be furious if you were one of those people and all of a sudden you realize, oh, my goodness, my taxes are going to go through the roof. The government debt is tripling, quadrupling, quintupling in just a year or two? Wouldn't you be furious? I mean, why did you and I and the rest of your viewers do as we were supposed to for the last 10 years, suddenly to have to bail out the people who didn't, so that a bunch of guys can continue to drive their Lamborghinis?
What, Jim, what does the average person do with their money? And I don't mean people like you. I don't see anybody on television or radio talk to the person who has played by the rules, lives by the line, has a little money in their 401k. I hear people all the time say, okay, I have a 401k. I've lost about half of it now. Everybody says I've got to keep it in there, but what do I do? Do they keep it in? What should they do, Jim?
Well, sometime in this foreseeable future, there's probably going to be a rally in the stock market. If there is a rally in the stock market, I plan to sell that. I'll tell you what I'm doing, Glenn. Who knows whether I'm right? I plan to sell that market, that rally. I will then put my money into natural resources, whether it's agriculture or mining or energy. And I also plan to put some of my money into foreign currencies, because the U.S. dollar is being destroyed right before our eyes, right in front of our eyes. And I think there are going to be a lot of very unhappy people in a year or two.
What kind of rally are you looking for?
Oh, Glenn, I wish I were that smart. I'm the world's worst stock market trader. I'm the world's worst short-term market timer. I don't know it. I don't even know if it'll happen. I see everything being beaten down so much and such panic. You know, the American stock market is down 25% this year, January 2nd, just as Mr. Obama was about to take office. Since then, the market's down 25%. That's panic. That's terror. And usually when you have panic and terror, there's a rally.
Do you think, Jim, that, by the way, we're talking to Jim Rogers in Singapore. Do you think that there is, this idea of cap and trade coming to America is staggering bad news on what it's going to cost the average person, in energy. But we also have tax policy that's coming and health care that's coming. Is there anything that you say, if the Americans would just focus on fighting this one thing, it should be what?
Well, cut taxes, cut spending. I mean, going deeper into debt in order to solve a big debt problem and a big borrowing problem, it sounds to me like total lunacy. Who ever heard of, when you're deep in debt and you're going bankrupt, to turn around and say, well, I'm going to borrow more money, and I'm going to consume more. That'll solve my problem. I mean, this is insane. They've got to cut spending drastically, horribly, and they've got to cut taxes dramatically if they want to solve the problems. They're not going to do it. I mean, they're not going to do it, Glenn, but that's what they need to do.
I've only got a couple of seconds. Do you have any idea when the world, or what a sign would be that the world is about to stop buying our treasuries, our debt?
There's going to be an auction or two sometime in the next year or so when people let's say they're going to sell $100 billion and people only bid for $82 billion. When that happens, you better start running for the hills.
Jim Rogers, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn.
You bet. Bye-bye.